No, I think part of our job is also to analyze what kind of scores will get you what kind of ranks, because the time between giving of the exam and result is a place where both students and parents are anxious. So I had thankfully more data in terms of ranks from students, not just from Bangalore, from across the country. So I knew it's going to be a pretty high rank, and I'd given CLAT before, and I have a All India rank 15 last year. So yeah, it was looking like a pretty good rank. So I think that is probably not the objective. The objective was to know that how changes of test pattern affects us, and what kind of attempts, what kind of speed, timing allocation between sections. These are things that we teach, and we would like to test out that part. Also later when CLAT asks for objections, and we have to also create a provisional answer key so that people who are anxious to can check how well they have done. So all these are reasons why we give the exam. But yes, it's still a good feeling, right? I started off as a mechanical engineer, though I never worked as one. I did my management degree from IIM Calcutta. That was, way back in 95, 97. I worked in a corporate for about 5 years. I was a marketing manager, and I worked with a couple of corporates like Lakme and Merck Electronics, which handles the Onida brand. But pretty soon I wanted to do something different. That standard traditional corporate life wasn't something that I like a lot. I literally hate wearing suits and ties and all that kind of stuff. So we looked at education as an area which is of interest. We believe that the work that we do has impact. At the same time, it is also more autonomous, So I started off by taking a franchisee center of a well-known training center, and I started with CAT coaching. This was in Calcutta. We did that for some time, reasonably successfully, I would say. A lot of our students right now in the corporate world whose beginning in terms of MBA training was done by us. And then we started a couple of education companies. One was called Vanguard Business School in Bangalore, attempt to kind of bootstrap B school education, specifically for not people who are not very good academically, but who can make pretty good frontline managers if they're trained. So that was an experiment which didn't work out as well as we thought. The placement side was okay, but getting the students, etc., was it's pretty difficult for a small college. So that some other entrepreneur has taken over and is trying to run it. The other company was called Vista Mind Education, which in a way was acquired by Career Launcher. So that's the journey where I come back to Career Launcher. And I started, I take care of the operations at Bangalore and Mysore. I think a combination of factors. I think one is that CAT, in a sense, was a little easier for students to accept me as a teacher because, I'm an MBA and that had that IIM background and all that. To some extent, also, I felt that, yes, obviously students respected me when I was teaching, but they also were, okay, but he's not a lawyer kind of thing was there in the back of the mind. Right? And we wanted to tell them that, look, there are certain set of skills needed to clear the exam, which has got nothing to do with being a lawyer or not being a lawyer. So that was one of the motivations. And there's a lot of strategy and tactics that we teach, and so in a way, my performance sort of adds a little more weight to the advice and mentorship that I give to students, and hopefully they follow my advice better. So that is one. And of course, the idea was the exam is also a little unpredictable. So it went from 150 questions to 120 questions. The level of difficulty of questions goes up and down. What would be the right cutoff, right strategy is also something that keeps varying. So that's one reason why we keep in touch with the exam by writing the exam. No, I think fundamentally nothing different because there's a lot of experience that I have with aptitude tests. CAT is also an aptitude test in that sense. But what matters here is the adaptation to changes in a paper. Right? So when you look at this year's CLAT exam, for example, the first section, English, is extremely easy. So almost any decently prepared student would score 20 out of 24. So scoring well in English is not the issue. The right strategy would be to score well in English at a very rapid pace. The minute you realize that this paper is easy, there are only 4 passages, they are also easy reads, the questions are direct. Then you up the speed. So you may have scheduled 25 minutes for English section normally, but in this kind of a paper, you probably would do it in 15. That saves you 10 minutes, and this 10 minutes then becomes pretty useful. And yes, because you're referring to the passage this time rather than using memory, it takes a little more time, but you can score well. It's for GK, but this time probably 50. These are all the on-spot changes that we hopefully have trained students to take it. But yeah, these changes help you get this thing. Legal was normal. Logical was a little tricky. So this is another area where maybe a few extra minutes that you've saved earlier could be useful. Then quant was fairly straightforward. And so it's only 12 questions, but we are in a high scoring exam where even half a mark can make 50 ranks difference. So attempting all the marks in quant. So it's a very high scoring, it's a high attempt kind of a paper. Okay, if a few go wrong, but the attempts have to be high with a pretty decent accuracy to have a good chance. So that's what I did. And thankfully, yes, I had a few minutes to spare after I finished all the questions. Honestly, I was not studying for myself in the sense that, yes, I make content, I evaluate content, and I prepare I prepare for a class, saying that if I want to teach these concepts, then what is the best way I would spend time in a class to ensure that students know the concepts. So that is the only learning I did. Otherwise, traditional learning in terms of my taking tests, I didn't take any mock for CLAT at all. I would obviously go through the mock papers so that I can solve doubts for students, but not take a mock like, okay, sit down, take 2 hours and do a mock exam kind of stuff. I didn't do that. GK, I'm reasonably, you would say, well informed. I read a lot and across diverse fields. But this time the GK was easy. So had the GK been a little tougher, then perhaps I would not have got this rank because the students put much more time and effort than I do for GK, and they would be better off in certain circumstances. But GK being easier actually kind of leveled the field for me. This year, I think logical reasoning is probably the most challenging section. Not because the passages were difficult to understand, but because the questions could be tricky and in many cases, more than one answer choice appeared to be correct, apparently correct. So that is where we teach students to say that, look, there's one option when you're sure is that you know the right answer, you pick the answer among the 4. When you're not sure, the alternative is to go the elimination route. Start working out which answers are not correct. And then when 2 answers appear correct, try to find the better of the 2. It may still go wrong, but the idea is you give yourself a greater chance of getting it correct, right? So if there are 10 questions which are tricky, if you get 7 out of them correct, that's a good ratio. So that's plus 7 marks and minus about 0.75. So it's still better off. So we are trying to work on probabilities here when the choices are very close. That would be the toughest section. But yes, it varies from year to year. Last year, the math part was very challenging in CLAT. Similarly, English was also a little tricky. GK was a little tricky for a lot of students last year. This year, yes, most of the sections were easy except logical. And we have a lot of mock tests prepared for students, where we deliberately vary the difficulty level of individual sections. Make English easy this time, logic tough, next time do the reverse and so on. So students are in that sense prepared for all eventuality. I personally do not believe that length of a paper should really be a concern. In fact, a lot of aptitude tests, for example, if you take a CAT or a XAT, most students cannot finish the paper. They don't attempt all the questions. And attempting all the questions is probably not even the objective. So you also manage time, pick the right questions to attempt, and if you have to leave certain questions, you leave the more difficult ones, which is also, in a way, something that student learns in terms of time management, being selective as a strategy. So I'm not sure making it easy was necessary. But even if that was the objective, it was not honestly well done. For example, the English paper really doesn't test anything. I mean, unless you make a silly mistake, literally you can score 24 on 24 in maybe 15 minutes. And this is not just me, it's just about any well-prepared student will probably do that. So in that sense, you lose sight of what really you are testing. Similarly, when you call a section GK and then you provide the answer in the passage itself, I mean, there's nothing wrong in using reading comprehension skill, but you already tested it in the English section. So why again make GK into an English section? So these are the things that are a little concerning because, I get a lot of this feedback from students and obviously they are not in a position to speak out. Probably on their behalf, I should speak out because this is an extremely tense thing. People have been, they have their dream sometimes from 9th and 10th. They do sometimes 2 years of, a lot of people do 2 years of full prepare for this exam, and then you get a paper which doesn't really test you and doesn't do justice to all the preparation that has been done. So it's a bit of worrying. And when this kind of high scoring paper happens, then you also make every mark and half mark too critical, wherein, half a mark can mean a difference of 50 ranks. That means you lost your dream college because of half a rank. It does happen in a real exam scenario, but the more you make it easy, the more you get these very, very close scores. I would rather have, and most students who have prepared honestly would prefer a slightly tougher paper. The consortium's view is correct. Prior knowledge of the law is not required. This happens because the law and the legal principles involved are already given in the passage, right? So there's a passage on family law. The concepts that are going to be tested are there in the passage. The questions test your ability to understand the concept and apply to scenarios. So, for example, it says, one of the passages this time said that any children from a void or voidable marriage are entitled to a share of their parents' share in the ancestral property. It is given in the passage. Now, then they'll give you a question. Look, Kavya married Ram, and but Ram was already married. So then you infer that this marriage is not valid. Therefore, it becomes a void marriage. And then we look at, okay, then what happens to property? Apply the principles and get it. So it's possible to do it. But does it help to have legal knowledge? Yes. Because there is the way of thinking about a legal principle. The kind of thinking that goes into law, the terminology used, all that, makes you better if you actually study it. Not necessarily very deep, but if the basics of a wide range of legal concepts are learned, it's a good thing. It helps. Also helps you with speed. Then you can go faster. It gives you an advantage, and you can also get more speed. Thankfully, I have worked with a couple of really good lawyers who work in Career Launcher Bangalore, mentoring students. Animesh, for example, Shabaz, Nitin Chakki. And in many times, I find law fascinating. So we have discussions with them, coffee table type discussions. And so that discussions really helped me in that sense. So I have them to thank for the kind of score that I got in legal. First thing is, while it is 10%, people might say, look, it's only 10% or 12 questions this time out of 120. In a paper like this, it becomes especially important, where you have reduced the number of questions, which means attempts are increasing. Second, it's also high scoring paper where every, as I said, half mark counts. So here quant becomes an important issue. The quant itself is not too difficult, but it requires you to be comfortable with numbers. It's not higher order math concepts at all. It's basic arithmetic, largely what you covered in 8th and 9th, not even 10th. But it requires you to be comfortable with numbers. It requires you to be a little fast at calculation. So in that sense, some practice would definitely help in this particular area. It's also important to note that CLAT as an exam is stream neutral. And it's a point which we should highlight, because people normally assume that it's humanities students who take up law. It is not true, right? They are absolutely okay with science students taking up law. They are absolutely okay with commerce students taking up law. If I look at Karnataka, for example, my state first, who is All India rank second, is a science student. The very next student, who is state rank 2, is a commerce student. And state rank 4 is a humanities student. So we get students across and the fact that the humanities students have done so well and got national ranks shows that the maths is not tough, even if you're a non-maths. Can be done. Yes, you just have to not fear math, get comfortable numbers, practice. Everything has to be seen in context. In this particular paper, we were talking about CLAT 2024, a lot of the answers were there in the passage or could be inferred from the passage. Not all. For example, there was a question which asked about what are the list of countries who were invited as special invitees for G20. So that was not there in the passage. So that comes from memory. Yes, the questions coming from memory were very less this time. But had you taken the same approach last year, you would have been in trouble. So we cannot extrapolate from this mark and say, okay, you don't need to prepare for GK. Everything will be there in the passage. That would be a very risky move to do, Because if next year's paper is like 23 CLAT, then you'll start. Right? So the good thing is they do not normally test very obscure facts and very trivial things that you should memorize and mug up. They typically want a student to be well informed about significant events. So normally what the way we teach is we tell them, okay, let's identify what are the significant events that have happened in India and in the world in the last 1 year or so to qualify as current events. So they could be 30, they could be 40, 50 significant. But in those significant events, please go in depth and please go into the history. So when you say Palestine war, for example, don't only look at what happened this year. Go into the history of the Palestine issue, because that is when you understand. And there could be questions from anywhere in the history of that issue. So those are old facts, but they're relevant today. So they will not ask things which are old and not relevant. They ask old stuff only when it is relevant or connected to current event. Okay. So yes, I would definitely not recommend that people just assume that they can get it from the passage. That will be risky. Ideally, it helps if you understand before memorizing. So a lot of our students take up multiple sources. There are a lot of sources. They take sources that we give. They also go for additional sources on their own. They create notes. They discuss among people. They ask questions to faculty. So the good thing is that also makes the students extremely well prepared. A lot of our students are also very good debaters and Model United Nations, Manners as they call it. And I think that also helps them because they're good at research. Obviously, there is no one answer that fits for everyone, right? Yeah. But in general, what we have seen is that it's very difficult if it's a crash course or a very short period of time, right? Unless for some reason you already have a lot of those skills which are required. So in general, we have most of the results come from the 2-year and 1-year programs. To be a safe number, right? But if you can do more than that, absolutely great, because it's a competitive exam finally. It's not about covering a syllabus. Second, I think the best way to look at it is, when are you clear that you want to go for law? If a student at the beginning of 11th itself is clear that she wants to go for law, then why wait for second year? Why not start in the first year? But if you're not clear, sometimes it happens that students are exploring options. So in the second year, they become more clear, then they join in the second year. But yes, 30 days, 40 days, crash courses kind of stuff, not recommended. I mean, if you decide so late, yes, then you can give it a try and do your best. But ideally, please start early. That's the message I can give. And once a student starts, we start off with a basic study plan. And then based on the performance in different exams, we keep adjusting the time. So for example, we notice that a particular student is not so good in logical reasoning, but pretty good in, let's say, legal. So we say, okay, let's adjust the time, reduce the time for legal, increase the time for critical reasoning. And we also suggest additional tests, additional material for them to go through to kind of up their legal logical reasoning. So a lot of it is fine tuning. So it's like the way we look at it, it's like, how do I put it? It's like Gopichand watching one of those players. Let's say he's watching Sindhu play and he's noticing something. So Sindhu is a great player, but what a coach does is look, this small mistake that's happening there, can you correct that? And then that helps. It's like you want to prepare a player. If you have a basic player, then you teach the basic skills. If you have an advanced player already with you, then your job is really to optimize the performance. Look at small mistakes that they're making and provide corrective action and so on. By the time we come to the end of the course, a lot of our toppers, we are looking at, they're already very good. We're just looking at that small changes that will give them the edge. Couple of things. One, let me start by saying that look, because that of rank 2 and rank 3 coming out, that kind of developed as a story. It's a human interest kind of a story, and we can't. But let me not then in any way forget that there is a broader set of teachers who are involved in teaching and mentoring all students, including. So I just want to make sure that is there. There are probably teachers who contributed more to Pradyot than I did, so they should be recognized. I think I probably mentioned Animesh Srivastav and Sridhar as one of them, then Shabaz and others who are there in that sense. So putting that aside, let me look at my impressions of Pradyot. I think 2-3 things stand out. One is his clarity. He is a science student. He even prepared a little bit for IIT Foundation early. But once he's explored, understood law and said, this is my career, the goal clarity is amazing. That is, I think, the first thing to note in him. Second, it's very important to recognize how supportive his parents were. I mean, neither of them are from the law background. But the minute he said that, look, I want to go for law, and he explains his reasons, they are like, okay, just do your best, get into the best possible college. That's what we want you to be successful. It doesn't matter you're a successful lawyer or engineer or doctor. That is again a role model for parents everywhere. Once you have, see, obviously you need to guide your child if they're going wrong. But if they're motivated, have a clear goal, then what you can do is, instead of questioning them, just get behind them and give them the full support. That is the second part. The third thing that stands out about Pradyot is the better he gets, the more humble he is. You talk to him before, after he got his second, there's not an inch of arrogance or pride anywhere in, right? He understands the nature of the exam. He knows that a lot of students competed, a lot of his friends studied with him. He might have got a few marks more than them, but he recognizes that, look, on another day it could have gone the other way around. He could have been behind and his friends could have been ahead. So he recognizes that, and that kind of humility is something that will really give him long-term benefits in his career. What really probably worked for him in my assessment is that he has this ability to stay calm under pressure. He doesn't get flustered. He's really what you call as a cool kid, right? So he recognized early that the paper was different. He adapted. It was comfortable. He gave it his best. Nowhere in the middle of the paper he is thinking like, will it work? Will it be enough? Am I doing enough? Nothing. It's just like, okay, I understood the nature of the paper, adapted my strategy, and after that it's question after question after question. Finish the paper, come home, I did my best, I'm satisfied, I have no regrets. That's the kind of thing. It's again, these are skills, not just for one exam. I think for life, this kind of attitude will really do good. So yeah, expect great things from him. So just would like to take the occasion to mention a couple of more things. We have yesterday the IELTS results coming out, which is another important exam for law students for National Law University, Delhi. And we have students from my centers who have done very well. There is Diya Agarwal, who is All India rank 1 in IELTS, right, among 30 odd thousands. That's also intensely competitive. And we also have rank 3 and rank 12, rank 19, and so on. So in many cases, yes, it's great that the name comes into the limelight and photographs and all that. But a lot of students have done well, and I'm actually proud of all of them. The first thing I would say is, please don't underestimate the exam. That's worrying for me because there's a lot of talk. This is a very easy exam and so on. Right? Easy exam doesn't mean that everybody got through doesn't happen. Right? There are limited seats. So an easy exam is as competitive as a difficult exam. So don't underestimate the exam. That's the first thing. Second, have goal clarity. It's understand what career you're choosing. If you're looking at law, absolutely great career. I have no disrespect for any career. I mean, whether you're a manager or an engineer or a doctor, they're all respectful professions. So whatever be your stream, whatever be the chatter around you that, people say, no, doing engineering is better or doing doctor is better, just relax. Nobody knows you better than anybody else. Talk to your parents about your aspirations. Explain to them why the reasons why you want to do law, why you're interested, why it fits with the strengths. For example, a lot of students here are very good at communication and language skills. Right? As I said, they're debaters, they're runners. So people with good language skills, it's a skill that fits well with the law. Right? So if there is a fit with your skill and the profession, and you also like the profession, then great. So I'm sure, as I said, I broadly feel that parents are quite understanding nowadays. All you need to do is give them a reason that I'm doing this because I'm convinced and I have clear-cut reasons for doing it. Then once you decide that, start the prep. Like, don't look at, can I do it in 6 months or 8 months or something. Once you're clear that's what you want to do, start early. Then typically pick a mentor, pick a system and follow it. One of the problems nowadays we have is there too much of advice floating around. A disciple who has 5 gurus never succeeds. I'm not saying one guru is better than the other, but I'm saying pick one, whoever you trust. You trust a guru, you trust the system, stick with it. Yes, because there are many cases where the system of teaching of a teacher is different from other. You can't follow two systems. Pick a system, and that is one. Two, it is very important, something that, teacher student is what we talk about. The students who study with you is again a very important component, right? So if you have a group of students who are equally talented, equally hardworking, motivated, then they push each other. All of them rise up. Right? So that is one of the things that we've seen in all of our centers. right? The groups of students who sort of, they motivate each other. If somebody gets a poor score, the rest of them are there like, it's okay, man, let's do it next time kind of stuff. So that camaraderie is something that's very critical. It's not it's possible to do CLAT on your own, but it's much easier if you have a group that is, it's a team that's going together. So more than competition, they are cooperating. So having a good team of well-motivated people together makes a big difference. Just teachers, see, each student gives 35, 40 marks sometimes, right? When you give 40 marks, there will be marks where your performance goes down, right? At that time, yes, there should be someone to say, look, it's okay, there's going to be another mark next week, right? Plus people who get in and say, okay, let's analyze. I'll help you analyze your mistakes. Teachers do it. Definitely we do that. But yes, in a lot of cases, students do it also together.